Hey everybody, it's Dr. Golds with Dr. Golds Optimal Living Institute. I have Chris with me today. He is our guest. He's going to be sharing his story. I just want to thank him for being here today. And it's a powerful story, has gone through a lot of transitions, and he's going to be sharing that as well. So why don't you get started?
Yeah. So I don't even know where to start. A little about me. I'm 25. I like to tell people that I've been 80 for 20 years.
Oh, he's an old soul.
That is an understatement, very old. So I've been through, at 25, I've been through a lot of the major life events that most people only get one of.
Right.
I lost a sister when I was 7, she was 4. We've moved many times. That's not as major, but we've had a lot of family dynamic changes. We had my brother had several serious health conditions. I was homeschooled and then transitioned to college, so that was wild. I've been divorced. I've had kids. We've had family members die. I worked in a church where we had a lot of experiences with death and losing loved ones. So we've had a lot of changes. So I don't know where to start with that. So you tell me, what would you like to hear?
Well, I know recently you've told me some things have changed in your life
Yes,
quite a bit.
yes, quite a bit. Yes.
And I love your shirt.
Thank you.
So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so very recently, actually, I was married. We had 2 little girls, my ex-wife and I, and it was a troubled relationship from the get-go. There was lots of health concerns for both sides.
Right.
There was, the normal married stuff, but
Yeah.
for me, there actually was something that was underneath it that kind of haunted me every day. I've known for 16 years, and the last month, actually, I had the courage to finally come out as gay, and in turn end the marriage,
Yeah.
but it was a mutual ending, so there wasn't any hostilities on either side. Actually, the way it happened, I was struggling with this for months and months, just not really getting why I wasn't feeling like this was it in the marriage. I wasn't really feeling right. I was justifying and talking and saying, like, this is how it should be, this is what you should do, you get married, you have kids, but the romantic and attraction portion of it just wasn't there for me, and that was the part that required the biggest, okay, let's talk it, it's okay, this is normal, this is how it feels for everyone.
Right.
And in doing that, actually, there was a lot of problems that I caused in the marriage that I didn't really see until afterwards. But finally, once coming out, I was struggling with this, and then I finally accepted it for myself, and I was like, okay, you're gay. It's okay.
Right.
What do we do now?
Right.
So I remember I was in my car and just praying about it and not really sure of, how do you sit down with somebody you've promised to spend the rest of your life with and say, you know what, this isn't going to work.
Right.
Actually, it was so interesting because the night I just prayed, I was like, please, whatever's meant to be, let it happen. I came home and it was just a regular night. The kids were playing. My ex-wife was sitting on the couch folding laundry like normal, and then she just kind of looks at me. She's like, we need to talk. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Okay, we can go with this.
Right.
And she said, I don't think that this is working for me. And I said, I don't think it is either.
Right.
And we kind of just talked about, where we were going, and she said that she felt like maybe we should consider lives apart. And then I thought, gee, I'll never get another opportunity like this. So I came out to her and I said, I've been struggling with a lot of things lately that I haven't been necessarily sharing with you. Because during our relationship, she'd asked me multiple times, and then once we got married, she was like, okay, I guess the answer is truly no, you're not gay. And so I told her, I said, I think that, and I remember very specifically, because there's a guy that I'm interested in that we shall remain nameless for this.
Right.
For this. And I said, I think that I'm going to try and date him. And she goes, what are you saying? And I said, I think that you've known this for a long time, but I am gay. And it was kind of a reckoning because for me, her and I were together for 8 years, married for 3. But it's something I always struggled with, and the things that we faced together as a married couple, dating couple, friends who were interested in each other mutually, however you want to describe that. you know, it kind of just got pushed to the back burner and never revisited for me. It was kind of something that would just pop up, and it was really haunting for me actually, because there was this lens of homophobia and things like, you know, for a straight male in 2021, that's kind of the worst thing you get socially, is somebody to tell you you're gay and they don't want to affiliate with you for that. So it's something that kind of shaped my mannerisms and the way I dress and the way I carry myself and present myself. And so finally being able to reckon with that, it was just freeing is not a word that's strong enough to describe that. And she knew too. I think for her there was actually a big emotional shift in our friendship, relationship, whatever it was at the time. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's been the past like 6 months of my life. Many job changes, many, you know, moves, many shifts in family dynamic. So yeah, it's been a lot.
Yes, it does sound like that, and thank you so much for sharing all this.
Yeah.
You mentioned about 10 years ago, or when you were 16, 16 years ago. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I say 16 because that is the farthest my memory goes of being romantically interested in somebody. I like to explain it as, you know, the natural connection or spark you feel when you're like, ooh, they're kind of cute.
Right.
You know, just getting to know somebody and you're just sitting there excited, like nowadays we text. So just like sitting and waiting for the text message response.
Right.
And then it comes through and you're like, ooh, you know, just that natural little spark of curiosity and space held, and even just walking through the street, seeing somebody and like, oh, they're attractive. That has always been with men for me.
Gotcha.
Always.
Gotcha.
And somewhere along the line, because I grew up relatively religious, that kind of got tucked away of like, you know, that's not how this works, that's not what you should do.
Okay.
So that was really kind of squashed. And then I met my ex-wife, who at the time, she checked all the boxes. You know, she was very attractive, very smart, very kind, like everything that's like, this should be the one for you. She was artistic, she sang. So she was everything. And, you know, it just, for me, I was like, okay, this should be the one, this should be it. So I pursued her. She didn't want anything to do with me, which was even better. So I waited a year, but still, I remember we had conversations of, she was like, you could be with anyone, and you know, you picked me. And for me, it was like, well, yeah, I've never looked at another woman like that. But I mean, it never even occurred to me that maybe I shouldn't even be looking at women, you know?
Right.
But it's something I knew because it was always that space and that spark and that little ignite of, ooh, you know, that's always come from men.
Okay, got it. And did you ever have a romantic relationship with a man?
Today the answer is yes,
Okay.
but you know, going back,
Yeah.
no, never. Like, there were friends that I shared with, and like we emotionally supported each other. There was friends that I cared for very deeply that could have developed into something, but nothing I ever let myself, you know, have.
Okay.
But I actually remember very specifically, there were certain men that came and went in my life that I was just like, you know, I would love to be with them. And I never thought it would be something that would be possible for me.
Right.
So it's entirely different.
Now you say you didn't think it would be possible. Was that because of the family, or what was that?
I think it was just because of my own shame and my own fear of accepting myself.
Okay. So what was this, you know, what was the decision to, you know, come out and...
So that's such an interesting question, because I'm still not certain of all of it. I have spent the last 2 years in therapy, and I've really been working on challenging my own ego and my own beliefs and kind of overcoming, and just, for me, it's so hard to try and describe. You killed me with that one.
Do your best.
But I remember very specifically, there was a conversation that we had, me and my therapist, and what it was is we were talking about how I felt about the way other people perceive me. Because I had somebody give me a compliment of being extraordinarily intelligent, and I was like, I never considered that about myself. I just never did. I didn't think of myself as, you know, attractive or intelligent or any of these things, and somebody just complimented me like it was not anything major, and for me it was just like, pump the brakes, what's going on? And he gave me this piece of advice that haunted me. And he said, you have to realize at some point, you have to honor what God has made you, because otherwise it becomes disrespectful to that creation.
Oh,
And that, for me, was kind of the nudge that kind of made everything fall into place. All the work I had done of like thwarting my ego and like really just, okay, I'm going to separate from where I'm at right now and what I think I need for my life and move into what makes me uncomfortable. Because for me, discomfort is really, it's really such a good thing that society makes and takes and turns into such a bad thing. But how many times, because I know you're married, how many times have you ever moved into a conversation or a space with your partner that you've been uncomfortable and you haven't really, you know, you're like leery, you're like, I know we need to talk about this, but you're just sitting there, you're like, oh, I want to beat around the bush and not get to this. But then how many times have you just said, okay, you know what, screw it, I'm going to just dive right in and come out on the other side. But that's, I mean, universally across all of the boards. Professionally, I actually went and I left my job as a medical assistant and worked as a housekeeper, which it was one of the best changes of my life because that was a big ego shift. So once I started doing that, it became easier and easier to say, you know what, I actually am these things. I need to just let myself be them and just exist in this uncomfortable space of, you know, this is me and I'm a little different, but it's okay.
It's okay.
And then furthering that, there was a ton of work we did on healthy boundaries. And once I started realizing that, you know, I have been compromising my healthy boundaries in this normalized should-be relationship, I realized that I was doing exactly what he said I shouldn't. You know, I was disrespecting this creation, this heart that was made in me, this being, this person that I am. I was just completely disregarding him. My health was not in the best state. I wasn't really taking care of myself the way I should be, and I was just ignoring it and just hoping that one day it would all magically change and I wouldn't have to put in any work and it would be comfortable and it would be nice and it would be just, you know, magic. So that's what ultimately decided, or that's when I ultimately decided, okay, you know that you have been, for me it was kind of stages. Like first I was like, okay, I know I'm straight, like I like women, that's you know, I would justify it for myself and I would like check the box. And then about 3 years ago I was like, okay, well maybe you're just bi and that's fine too. A lot of people are, like it's totally fine. And then I finally got to the point I was like, no, look at yourself. Aside from all stereotypes, I was like, just objectively look and see that, you know what, you don't look at women in that way. And that's not everything about you. That's just you. You know, it's not everything. It's not your identity. You're still Christopher at the end of the day. You just happen to like men. You know, it's okay. So it was accepting that, I think, was the hardest part, because then I felt this urgency of, okay, we need to do things, because my daughters, they're 3 and they're going to be, and my youngest is going to be 2. And I remember actually we were watching this show. It's called Grace and Frankie on Netflix. And the whole premise of the story is, you know, it's this couple that's been married 30 plus years. And then they decide that, or then the husband is like, well, actually I've been having an affair with this man for 25 years. And I was just like, I don't want that. You know, you get to see lives destroyed. And I mean, the show's written very comically. And, but that was so off-putting for me, is because I knew this about myself, and then I was watching this show and I was like, this is what your life is going to play out as if you don't, you know, have the courage to say something now. And so I ultimately decided that the kids are young enough, you know, I can still make sure that they have a healthy co-parenting situation. They'll still have their father figure, they'll still have their mother figure, they just might have a couple of extra father figures around. So you know what, it'll be okay.
A little extra on the
Yeah, exactly. So it was after kind of just sitting and taking an inventory of what life would be like that I decided to have the conversation with her. Granted, I mean, the way our marriage was, it was headed for divorce anyway. We just kind of killed 2 birds with one stone in one conversation and dealt with all of it.
So it's amicable, and
yes,
they call it conscious uncoupling. So.
Yeah, I like that definition, conscious uncoupling. So
how would you, or what advice would you share with others, you know, who may, or, you know, may be confused or may know, but, you know, maybe some pointers you can tell to help them, for folks that are trying to figure things out, and then
Yeah.
some key things that can be clear that maybe they are attracted to the same sex. What should they be doing and stuff like that.
I don't think there's really one way to go about it.
Mm.
I mean, in some kind of a sense, like there gets a point where you have to kind of unmarry yourself from the opinions of others. Like, what would
Gotcha.
mom say? What would dad say? What
Gotcha.
would, in my case, what would spouse say?
Right.
But it's a way of knowing that, knowing what to look for, you know, because it's not always clear as day of, oh my gosh, I like this person. I mean, you have little moments where, you know, you're like, oh, that person is just great, and I want to get to know them, and I want to I want to have a relationship with them, and I want to kiss them, and there's like all of the little things that you have in a relationship that just kind of spark naturally. But your feelings about your feelings are a big telltale. You know, if you're feeling like you're in a relationship or a marriage and you felt like it's just not going to work. I mean, for us, it was 11 marriage counselors and like 5 personal counselors, several doctors. And for me, even actually, it was med school too. I went through pre-med, I made it through to my last semester, and then, you know, because I wanted to be that person for her, but I was just, you know, doing it based on, I should be doing this. Not because I want to do this, but because I should. And that was the biggest tell is, you know, are you genuinely there because you want to be? Or are you there because you feel like you have to be and should be? And once you kind of get through that and you sort through that, you really can kind of start, okay, it's going to be uncomfortable, but maybe even just start, you know, for somebody who's single, it's so easy because it's just like, you can kind of start dating on the side and just see what works, how you feel. It's a little more complicated the later you get into life when you've got, you know, people depending on you and marriages and families. Especially, I think my relationship with my mom was the one that was hit hardest because her and I were always close, and it's just, you know, surprise, I've had this and I've known this for 16 years and I've never once mentioned anything about it.
So what were your parents' reactions? Did they have an idea, or what did they think?
Well, it was actually a disaster.
Oh, okay.
But that's okay.
Okay.
So I ended up, it was the morning after we talked about it, and I told my ex-wife about, you know, I'm gay and I think we should get a divorce and kind of just figure out our lives individually. She went over to my parents' house and she called me and she's like, I'm freaking out because I feel like I'm going to let it slip to your mother. So I called her and I'm at work and I'm doing my housekeeper thing in my little like colored uniform, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so uncomfortable and not how I wanted to do it at all. So I told her, and she was just, I mean, there was a minute or two of silence, and then that was about it. And then I asked her specifically, you know, I want to tell the family one by one, and like in my own words, in person, and it just did not go that way at all. And actually, the first person who called me was my granddad, who is a Southern Baptist pastor, and he's always been like, he has been my dad growing up. And he was the one I was the most nervous about because, you know, there's very definitive religious beliefs in place. But he called me and he said, I just want to let you know that I love you, and you know, he had some other choice words about things that happened that were really funny, but I'm not going to share those for this because I don't know what we're rated. So he just, you know, he showed up to just love me and accept me for who I am, and he said, you know, if you ever need anything with the kids or you need to just talk, you just call me. And my grandmother was right there with him,
that's sweet.
which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I remember talking to my dad about it. He was like, I really don't care. He's like, I'm not surprised at all. Like, you know, I just wish you would have figured this out first, but we got the babies out of it, so it's cool. And then, yeah, it's been, like I said, my relationship with my mom was the one that was hit the hardest, but it's not completely.
So she's talking to you
Yeah,
and all.
she's trying her best. She's still struggling with it, but that's normal.
Is it because of the religious factor, or she didn't have any
No,
idea?
I think it's more of a trust factor of just like, you know, this is a big secret, and like I remember we had conversations where she was like, "Are you sure this isn't just a phase?" And I'm like, "This is the thing I've known about myself the longest. Out of all of the things, all of my values, all of my beliefs, this is the thing I've known the longest." So.
Did she just feel like you didn't tell her because did you like explain that you're because of the religious factors or other reasons?
I tried to, but I think the shock of the news kind of just, we weren't in person, the phone connection wasn't very good, so it
And
was
that
just
happened
really
because
hard.
of your ex-wife talking.
Yeah, and she was like, I'm terrified that I'm gonna let this slip, so
right,
like,
right,
please
right.
just tell her.
I understand.
So,
Yeah, normally you would be in person. So.
yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. I wanted to do all of it in person.
That makes sense.
But, you know,
Yeah, things happen.
they absolutely do.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess the kids are too small now, but
Mhm.
would you just say when they get older, what age group would you suggest that?
For me, I think they're at an age where it's going to be a normalized thing. It's not really going to be that jarring.
Right.
I don't really have an idea of what age in
Right.
particular, but you know, they'll know, and then I'll be able to kind of just be there with them for it to answer the questions.
That's
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, and
So.
I'm assuming you're gonna be a huge role in their lives. So
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, my kids are everything.
Yeah.
It's just right now we're conflicting with busy work schedules,
of
so I
course.
see them maybe once or twice a week.
Okay. Gotcha.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, those are my questions.
Okay.
Was there anything else you wanted to share or add or anything else?
Not so much about me personally. One of the things I have learned through all of this is a new definition of what it means to be courageous.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So something that was actually really surprising for me is just for me seeing folks who have come out and who are out living,
Yeah.
because that's the hardest part of all of it,
Yeah.
is once you come out, you have to be out.
Right.
You know, it's no
right.
longer like you have to unmarry a lot of shame and
Right.
a lot of guilt, a lot of just stereotypical like, oh gosh, this is not right,
Right.
and just accept it.
Right.
So something about seeing folks who are out is really inspiring to me because it takes a lot of courage to get up and, you know,
Yeah.
just be yourself every day.
Yeah.
And I know we say that for years, but it's a new definition for me because it's finally escaping this lens and this filter of like, what is somebody else going to think about me,
Right.
and move to this is actually me. You know,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I love
I'm
it.
gonna see it and be it and
Yeah.
experience it, and that's
Right.
just it.
Right.
So
Thank you for doing all this. It is very courageous, and
Well,
thank
thank
you
you.
for sharing and letting me, taking this interview with me today.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate you, and sending out lots of love to you for your journey, because I know this is a new chapter, new
Yes.
beginnings, and love to continue and hear all the new blessings and things that come your way in the future.
well, thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Thank you.